Welcome to the Patriotic Pulpit. You know, things are happening so rapidly, the news is unfolding so quickly that it's very difficult to have a once a week or even twice a week podcast not keep up with what's happening. You know, last week it was, of course, the obvious assassination attempt on Donald Trump and what's going on. And then the Kimberly Cheadle's been before Congress today. I'm recording this on Monday, July 22. And she's being grilled by Congress today, or it has occurred this morning. And then not much came out of that, but we have a lot of questions, a lot of demands for her to resign her position, with which I agree. Then, of course, yesterday, Joe Biden drops out of the race. Why did he drop out? We don't have any answers to that. We don't have any statements from him except from a letter that he supposedly wrote. Was he forced out? Who made the decision? Within an hour of previously, his staff had been trying to raise money for him, and all of a sudden he drops out of the race. Now all of a sudden, while I'm actually recording, Kamala Harris is speaking to a group of Democrat supporters. Is she able to use the money that was in his war chest, which adds up to millions of dollars? All of these things happening so quickly. Questions unanswered, stones left unturned. We don't know what's going on and who's running the country right now. All of these questions. Plus, I want to back up and think about some things regarding Donald Trump. So basically in the show, I want to cover these different areas. Number one, who is running the country? I have some notes put together by Matt Taibbi, also some of the notes myself, just asking some questions about who is running the country and who has been running the country. Secondly, I want to talk about reflect upon Donald Trump's assassination, the attempt on his life, and some notes here from Bob Lynn, who is the leader of the Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee. Just a great article, and I want to share that with you. And then how Trump has been a threat to the New World Order by Brandon Smith. Alex Newman has a website called Liberty Sentinel. I don't know if you get that or if you're a subscriber to Liberty Sentinel, but you need to. Alex Newman, a great political commentator, really brilliant man, and he has an article posted called, speaking about Trump's being a threat to the New World Order and why the New World Order, not simply fighting the Democrats, but the globalists of the world. So we'll talk about all of that in just a few moments. So let's first of all think about who in the world is running the country right now. Joe Biden says he's too incapacitated, or that of course has been the view of many conservatives for a long, long time, that he's too incapacitated. Even by his own staff, we're told that he's only active from about, 10 to 4, 10 to 3 after that. But who's been running the country in the after hours, and who's running the country right now? He is too incapacitated to run for re-election, but he's not too incapacitated to stay in office. What in the world is going on? And so that's the real question. Matt Taibbi asks us, if this happened in Belarus, or Burundi, or Myanmar, Joe Biden's blitzkrieg withdrawal from the presidential race would have inspired eye rolls, but we jettisoned an incumbent president's re-election campaign with all the pomp of an NFL practice squad transition, announcing the move via the blip of a social media post. That is absolutely crazy. Only in America is anyone tempted to take such head-scratching events at face value. And that's exactly what particularly the Democrats are going to do. They're going to say take it all at face value. So in no particular order, there are several things I want to notice about Biden's withdrawal from the campaign, the support that seemingly is going to put Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket. Number one, you cannot help but think that there is a conspiracy afoot. I know that the word conspiracy throws many people into conniption fits because they don't want to believe any conspiracies, unless we're talking about the assassination of JFK or something. But the Biden condition has been known by the Democratic National Committee for a long time. It has been known by his staff. It has been known by his cabinet. It has been known by his aides. Everyone on the inside, can everybody see that there's an insider track here? That we are run by insiders in our country? Now, they said, the Democratic National Committee said they didn't know of Biden's condition. Now, this is to justify how they can take money that was given to the Biden campaign by voters and apply it to someone else. Kamala is a part of all of this. But all of this is simply just a thumb in your eye, the Democratic voters, and saying, you know what? Doesn't matter who you voted for in the primary. Doesn't matter who you've given money to. And all of this, they have covered it up, and they've lied to the American people, knowing that he has been incapacitated for a long time. As a matter of fact, RFK Jr. came out just the other day and reminded us that he had warned America over a year ago that Joe Biden was incapacitated. He was not able to do his job. And he also warned us that the Democratic National Committee was changing the rules in order to rig it for Biden at that time and to push RFK Jr. out. And they've covered this all up. So what does all of this say? Just take a step back. You know what? It shows you one thing, and that is that there is a deep state. The party elites of the Democratic Party are in control of this country. The party elites are in control, and they are controlling the choices for the American people right now. They're controlling it. It's just as if I had two dolls sitting in my pocket, and I'm the deep state, and they're just choosing what to do. Who is a part of this deep state? Obviously, people like Barack Obama, George Soros, many others who funnel the money into Hollywood elites. They're all in control of this, and they're manipulating the Democratic Party, the Democratic people, and the Democratic voters, and they're manipulating the United States citizens. That's what's happening. They have had all of the candidates in their pocket for a long time. All that we see is simply window dressing. The Democratic operatives who have been on Fox News, have been on other stations telling us, well, you know what, Joe Biden is perfectly capable. I've heard so many people say, well, the Democratic people saying that Joe Biden's performance in the debate was simply an off night for him. And I've seen him behind the scenes, and he is perfectly capable. He's sharp. He's focused. He knows what he's doing. What a pack of lies that has been. This has all been window dressing. It's all fakery. And it brings us to this question. Democracy? They talk about democracy. Of course, we're not supposed to be in a democracy. We're supposed to be in a democratic republic. But democracy for the people, by the people, of the people? No. The Democrats are not being honest with people about the Biden condition. They never have been, as RFK Jr. has pointed out over and over again, and others. Sean Hannity on Fox News has pointed this out, I think, for probably 5 or 6 years. How about all the people who voted for Joe Biden? This is not about the people. It's not about the people who are putting money into the Kamala Harris campaign, if she's indeed going to be the nominee. It is about the powerful elite who reject the nomination of the people in America. They control everything. I just wonder how long the Democrats will put up with being treated like puppets in this country, because that's exactly what's going on. And it gives a whole new meaning to public service, doesn't it? How about James Clyburn? Just continuing this track for just a moment. How about James Clyburn? The senior senator from South Carolina, just the other day, just a few days ago, endorsed Joe Biden. You can see this. You can go to the internet and find him endorsing Joe Biden just a couple of days ago, saying he's a great president and he is perfectly capable. What? This is crazy stuff. How about Debbie Dingell, the Democrat from Michigan? She said, I saw her on an interview yesterday. She said, I don't accept the polls at all. And she still defends that Biden was very focused in conversation until just a few days ago. She said, when I saw him, he was very focused and very alert in conversations. Well, how do you explain the debate performance? That was a disastrous debate performance. It actually showed the American people what Joe Biden really is. And it just lifted up the skirts and we saw the hairy legs. That's exactly what's been going on. They're just lying to the American people. How about Cedric Richmond, Sunday morning, who is, I think, the chair of the Democratic National Committee or something like that. Anyway, Cedric Richmond put out a statement saying that Joe Biden is strong. He's going to win. That was Sunday morning. By Sunday after church, after lunch, Joe Biden resigns. You know, all of this is just so much proof that we have a deep state, that Biden has never been in control. He's not controlling what's going on. He doesn't control his speeches. He doesn't control his policies. He just gets out there and puppets what some of the people want to do. Now, Matt Taibbi asked this question. I think I cannot help but laugh about it. Where's Waldo? That is, where's Joe Biden? The most consequential decision, Taibbi's writing now, he says, the most consequential decision of Joe Biden's presidency was executed by a tweet Sunday afternoon via a screenshot of a letter posted at 1:46 p.m. There's no press conference, there's no video, there's no photo commemorating any human being's participation in the event. The letter wasn't posted on the White House briefing room site, and even lesser news, including a statement purporting to quote Biden at length on climate pollution reduction grants, was posted yesterday. Now, this, of course, I'm recording Monday, once again, July 22. This was yesterday. The news happened so quickly, it's hard to keep up with it. It was furthermore, Taibbi points out, written neither on a presidential stationery nor under campaign letterhead, and appeared rushed, thanking Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner, but not endorsing her. That was the first tweet. In a second tweet, 27 minutes later, however, Joe Biden announced, "Today I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee for our party this year." So, papers from the Washington Post, New York Times, they reported that Biden wrote in a letter that he posted or said in a statement that he was dropping out. However, we did not hear from any official spokesperson, not even Deputy Platforms Director Andy Volosky, who reportedly runs Biden's Twitter account. No one of those people spoke explaining how the announcement came to be. How did it happen? Why did it happen? What were the factors involved in making that decision? Because the Democratic machine was telling us, inclusive of all those socialist Democrats, such as the James Clyburn, that they're supporting him fully. And that was as of Saturday. And then Sunday morning, his chair was saying he's going to win. Wow, we the American people have been taken for a ride. It's absolutely stunning. And there's not any answers forthcoming. About like Kimberly Cheadle before the Congress this morning, and having no answer. I'll get back to you on that. I'll get back to you. We are being lied to. We're being controlled like so many puppets by the Democratic machine. Now, Biden's letter contained a lot of important information. He said he will speak to the nation in more detail later this week about my decision. However, giving defiant protestations by him and his staff about remaining in the race, that happened through Sunday morning, it is crucial for someone in Biden's inner circle, Taibbi's writing here, preferably a family member, to make a public statement soon. Now, they may, by the time this is published, it may be that way. By that time this podcast is posted, that may have happened, but as of right now, no. As is, any story that puts Joe Biden at the center of yesterday's events is about as convincing as the Michael Jordan cutouts move past the window scene from Home Alone. So writes Taibbi. So he asked this question, well, then who is in charge? After Biden's cryptic letter came out yesterday, a slew of elected Democrats, including rumored potential candidates like Gretchen Whitmer, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro, California's Gavin Newsom, and both Bill and Hillary Clinton all swiftly endorsed Harris. Harris instantly had her own campaign site, suggesting significant lead time and planning. That's interesting. She had already had it laid out, and it indicated that she had some indication that he was going to drop out. So they're not communicating with each other, let alone the American people. Even JoeBiden.com immediately became a mirror to the Harris site, while Biden's Twitter face page was refashioned to feature a Harris 2024 banner. For all the world, it looked as if the party had unanimously decided to throw its weight behind Kamala well before the weekend, too. However, Barack Obama did not endorse Harris, nor did Chuck Schumer, nor did Nancy Pelosi, nor did Cory Booker. Now, by the time, once again, this is aired, this all may change, but things are happening so rapidly, you just makes your head spin. We're being told in numerous press accounts by more people familiar with the matter that this is all mere formality, and the party leaders are firmly and without reservation behind Kamala Harris. But are they? Some sources are not so sure. The top candidates seem to be publicly coalescing around Kamala Harris. So late last night, now this would be, by the time this airs, it was to be late last night, Sunday night, that'd be July 21. All of this may be temporary stance held under the, until the Democrats are sure, because here's the problem. America, the Democrats cannot simply take the $239 million war chest that is Joe Biden's and transfer it to Kamala without some kind of an issue. So the Republicans are preparing a legal challenge if Democrats attempt to pass on Biden's cash, arguing that the pair needed to be officially nominated before such a handoff could legally take place. All of this, of course, makes it all very confusing for the average American such as I am. At least one Democratic consultant and several Republicans believe the fate of Harris is tied to two factors. This is according to Taibbi in his research. Number one, how well the public responds to her in the next week or so. That's number one. That will be, of course, a big issue. Number two, whether or not the funds issue, can we transfer those monies, be resolved quickly enough to allow her to begin aggressively advertising her candidacy. Now, while I'm recording, she's speaking right now to Democratic at a Democratic fundraiser event and Democratic supporters. So despite the quick endorsements, there have been, of course, signs of unease in the Democratic Party, and rightly so, because they're absolutely in mass confusion. Just this past Friday afternoon, Harris held a conference call for top donors to what was then still the Biden-Harris campaign. Now think about that. She held a conference call on Friday. That would be July 19. She held a conference call for donors to what was then the Biden-Harris campaign. She showed up half hour late, said little except that they were going to win. Now here's the Washington Post. It says everyone was upset after the call. That's what one donor stated, quoting one donor, recalling the disastrous end of the Harris 2020 run, also marked by internal frustrations about the future vice president's behavior. I have never seen an organization treat its staff so poorly, one Harris official wrote in a letter that was published by the New York Times. So she's not pleasing the donors. She's not pleasing people who are would-be donors and would-be supporters. That was as of Friday. So rumors persisted since Biden's own Hindenburg debate performance that top-level Democrats are less than thrilled with the prospect of a Harris run. The Times ran a Longhouse editorial yesterday rejecting the idea of anointing Harris, hinting at electability issues and calling for a candidate to emerge from the process of public scrutiny instead. Senior Democrats will watch to see how Kamala holds up under a few weeks of internet fragging. That's what's going to happen when people really get after her on the internet, specifically on X. Millions are about to become introduced to the phrase, what can be unburdened by what has been. And then at that point, then decide. How the decision was made then, however, will tell us a lot about the question, what matters more than anything right now is who is running America right now. Who is running America? Is it Obama? Is it the Clintons? Politico's Why Biden Dropped Out article claimed congressional leaders, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, they left the horse dead, the horse's head rather, in the president's bed, while multiple Republican sources also pointed out that Pelosi and Obama's non-endorsement. So the question is, according to Politico, who's running the country? And that's a legitimate question. The only thing we know for sure, Joe Biden isn't capable, he hasn't been capable, and it has been one massive conspiratorial cover-up against the American people. That's what's been going on. Bob Lynn is the president of the Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee, and he writes a great article calling it "The Fate of the Nation is in the Hands of God." And I want to look at that. I want to read portions of that to you and just note some things regarding it. And this, of course, is a reflection on the events a week ago, just a little over a week ago, and that is the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. I want to look at that, but I want to reflect back for just a moment also on what we just talked about. Ladies and gentlemen, this is serious business. Who's running our country? And we can see immediately that we have not a leader in place. I wonder what the foreign countries are saying. I wonder what they're looking at and saying about America. They're looking at us and say, we know Joe Biden is not able to run this country. And the American citizens have seen Joe Biden is not able to run the country. But, I mean, he's not able to run for re-election. He's too feeble to run for election. So who is running the country right now? This alone shows you that we have a deep state that is in place, a democratic, socialist-led deep state that is pulling the strings on everything, apparently, and treating all these candidates like so many puppets and putting Kamala up there and seeing how she's going to do. The Democrats have a huge problem. That is how they're going to transfer the money from Joe Biden's war chest to Kamala's. Absolute disarray. And I, for one, as an American citizen, am not only appalled, but it angers me that so many Democrats treat us like stupid idiots in this country. And so, okay, we're going to put Kamala up there, and I wouldn't be supportive of her anyway, but nevertheless, they just treat everybody in America like we're a bunch of imbeciles, and we don't know what's going on, we really don't. And they're not transparent. But like we just are too stupid, and we're just going to track along. And I guess a lot of Democrats will, but I tell you what, this is really unprecedented in my thinking. I don't know of anything like this ever. Joe Biden quitting by putting out a little letter and putting it out on X, and he's not made an appearance yet. Is he alive? I don't even know. Makes you wonder. Anyway, let's go to Bob Lynn for a moment. Bob Lynn's this is an article that he wrote. Oklahoma Conservative Political Action Committee. If you're in Oklahoma, I hope you're part of this, and you don't have to be in Oklahoma to be a part of it. But Bob Lynn is just a great thinker, great researcher, and he has an article called "The Fate of a Nation is in the Hands of God." And he points out, beginning as he starts the article, he says, Democratic commentator, political strategist James Carville is one of the many on the secular left who are expressing their disdain that because of a well-timed tilt of the head, the improbable miss of an assassin's bullet is being heralded as a divine miracle. He just doesn't like that. We don't want to talk about divine intervention here, whether you use the word miracle or providential or however you want to talk about it. But I do believe that God's hand was in on saving Donald Trump's life. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. But James Carville, of course, does not. So we can't be talking about that. So even more irritating to the left is the implication that God somehow has not only saved his life, but is somehow endorsing Donald Trump. So I don't know regarding God endorsing Donald Trump or not. I don't have privy to the counsels of God, but I do believe that God's providence works in the lives of Americans, works in the lives of human beings, and it is hard to escape the conclusion that God protected Donald Trump in that attempted assassination. So Bob Lynn writes, those who acknowledge Christianity's central role both in building the West and in providing the foundation for America's first 13 colonies readily affirm that God ordains the affairs of men and the nations that they build. And it's interesting to note that for nearly 4 centuries, providence was widely presumed in America. Providence is the overruling control of God in the affairs of men. It's interesting to note, we might just take a sidebar here and make notation that providence is not used one time in all of the Bible to refer to God's activity in the affairs of men. But nevertheless, it is the assumption, the basic assumption of all Scripture, and that is that God not only is alive, but he moves in the affairs of men, and that providence, that is provision that God makes, actually controls the world. And under that general umbrella of providence, we can place whether intervening in the world in miraculous events, which actually violates the laws of nature, or simply through natural means working out his purposes in the world, which I believe is what is going on right now in the world. Providence, God's providence, has been the assumption, the basic assumption not only of Scripture, but also the basic assumption of Americans since the founding of the colony in 1620 Massachusetts Bay. The McGuffey Reader, for example, used widely in public education and private education through the early decades and in the early centuries of America, was written by 2 Presbyterian Calvinists who desired not only to teach academics, but Bob Lynn writes also the fundamentals of morality and the Christian foundations required to sustain a civil society. If you're going to have a civil society, you have to have Christian principles at the base, the bottom line of it, the foundation of it. The McGuffey Readers, it has sold more than 120 million copies, was used in public schools until the mid-20th century. Of course, at that time, when the progressives took over, of course, we made a sharp left-hand turn toward communism, socialism, and everything Christian has been ousted out of the public education system, out of the universities, out of the public discourse, and they're trying to keep it out of the public square. So, McGuffey Readers. The New England Primer was actually published in 1777, used the Bible to teach the alphabet in America's schools for more than 200 years. It contained the Westminster Shorter Catechism, which is a foundational document of many denominations. And regarding the alphabet, here's how it taught the alphabet to school children. A refers to Adam's fall. Today, by the way, in schools, so you're talking about, and even in high schools, which I've been a high school teacher, as a high school teacher in high school classrooms, people don't even know about Adam's fall. The kids don't even, unless they're trained at home and the parents teach them the Bible and they go to church somewhere, generally children do not know anything about Adam. Who's Adam? This is how the McGuffey Reader taught the alphabet. A is for Adam's fall. And it affected us all. Z, let's talk about Z. Zacchaeus. He did climb a tree, our Lord to see. This is how McGuffey Reader taught the alphabet to children. Secularism had no place in America's schools. It was divine providence. Most American school children also knew the 1775 story of providence regarding George Washington and the story that is known as the bulletproof George Washington. So here's basically the outline of the story. And most school children knew this. And you'll see how this relates to Donald Trump. On July 7, 1755, 23-year-old George Washington helped lead the Americans and the British in a war against the French and the Indians. It was called the French and Indian War. The battle was called the Battle of Monongahela. On that day, over 700 of the 1,300 British and Virginia militia troops were killed. Washington was the only officer to walk out of the battle unscathed. Several horses had been shot from under him. He had 4 bullet holes in his coat, 1 in his hat, bullet fragments in his hair. In a letter to his family, Washington wrote this statement: by the all-powerful dispensations of providence, I have been protected beyond human probability or expectation. 15 years later, 1770, Washington and a friend returned to the same woods. They were going back to the battle site to reminisce. And there they met the Indian chief who had led the battle, Guyasuta. 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 The chief had told his braves, this is according to Guyasuta, the chief had told his braves to single out and shoot all of the officers, including Washington. And the chief himself said this: he had fired 17 shots at Washington, and he concluded that Washington was under divine protection, and he instructed his braves to cease shooting at him. On that day, 15 years later, the Indian chief told Washington, when Washington came back to the battle site, here's what Guyasuta had to say: I have come to pay homage to the man who is the particular favorite of heaven and who can never die in battle. And of course, incidentally, Washington did not die in battle. The providential nature of Washington's experience in battle is analogous to that of King Ahab, husband of the famed Jezebel. Ahab met with a providential frown rather than smiling providence that Washington experienced, because he was told that he was not going to come home alive, that Micaiah, the prophet, was called in. 1 Kings 22. What a gripping story as this is. And King Ahab asked him, prophet of God Micaiah asked him, Ahab asked him what was going to occur in the battle. And here is what Micaiah said, that you will never come home. He will never come home. The scripture tells us a certain man drew his bow at random and struck the king of Israel between the scale of the armor and the breastplate. That's 1 Kings 22 and verse 34. That is, of course, the providence of God that had assigned to Ahab death for his wickedness and his departure from God's ways. So this text, McGuffey readers, express that to children, school children, for many, many generations. And that's how our children were brought up in the public school system, in private schools, McGuffey readers. And that was the foundation of Western civilization, providence. And it was referred to so frequently, but now you don't hear anything about such texts as bulletproof George Washington. But the whole point is that God governs in the affairs and rules in the affairs of men and in nations. But since that day, now Bob Lynn writes this, the Christian soul of America has since departed. Dr. Herbert Schlossberg, by the way, Schlossberg has written several great books, and several of them I have in my library. He addressed the spiritual decline of America. He spoke of the spooks who have come through the unguarded doors of academia. An alien ideology dictated the metaphysics of a blind, random, and purposeless cosmic etymology. In other words, none of our lives have any purpose, and that is what people are told today, and our children are taught in schools, and they're taught that in the university also. And therefore, we are left, according to Schlossberg, with only hedonism. And to imagine realities we think will make us happy, we'll just have to imagine it. These realities of just what's going on in life, that's all that we have. They have nothing after life, nothing after we die. Well, all of that's what's happened in our school system. And Bob Lynn points out, quoting Schlossberg, that point out that the Christian soul has departed from America. How sad is that? But that brings us back to James Carville's reaction to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And that is, James Carville hates God, apparently, hates providence, and hates the idea that providence has protected Donald Trump to this hour. But I believe it. I think many Americans do also. I've even seen Mark Zuckerberg on X pointing out, saying, or on Facebook pointing out, I at one point, of course, did not support Donald Trump, but I can't help but be amazed at what has been taking place here. Acting as if he's changing and switching, doing a switcheroo on who he's supporting. The point simply is that God rules in the affairs of men, and I believe that's exactly the protective custody that we have regarding Donald Trump and the last assassination attempt. We'll be back in just a moment. Have you ever wondered why Donald Trump is so hated by the left? It's not simply because of his tweets, not simply because he's plain spoken. A lot of people are very plain spoken in politics and out of politics. Why is Donald Trump so hated by the lefties in our country, by the socialists, which the Democratic Party has become actually a socialist party in America? Why is Donald Trump so hated by them and so feared by them? Well, there's an article here that is published by Alex Newman in Liberty Sentinel by Brandon Smith. And he makes a statement, the title of it is, "The Globalist Guru Claims that Trump's re-election will mean the death of the global order." This is exactly what I believe to be the case, what I have believed to be the case for a long time. Donald Trump is a threat to the global socialist world order, which is supported by the United Nations. That's why the United Nations devotees hate him, which of course includes all the Democratic Party. That's why they hate Donald Trump. So this is the article by Brandon Smith, and he speaks about Yuval Harari, a best-known globalist philosopher, a guru, tied to the World Economic Forum. And so this is his article. He is infamous, he tells us, for his TED Talks, his summit speeches, declaring the coming abandonment of personal individualism and independence while elevating AI as the harbinger of a new technological religion. He joyously preaches about the fusion of AI technology with the human body to give certain elitist groups the power of gods. His notions of the supposedly infinite abilities of algorithms to influence culture and politics are so overblown, they enter into the realm of children's fantasy. So that's how Smith begins his article. He goes on to say, "I mention Harari often in my work because I believe he is a kind of litmus test for the true intentions of globalists. He's a lot like Henry Kissinger in his New World Order zealotry. He has a hard time keeping his mouth shut about the greater agenda, and this works to our advantage." And that, of course, is the reason is because now we know this is exactly what conservatives have been saying since the 1940s, that this has been on the agenda. This has been on the docket all the time. This is what the United Nations has been about. This is what socialists, world socialists, have always been about. But back to the article. If you really want to know what the elite's plans are, look up the past discussions by true believers by Harari. When they start preaching their dark gospel, they can barely control themselves. And Harari's writings are replete with calls for digital authoritarianism and global government. Now, they used to say global governance because, wow, that might fool some people here who, because conservatives have been saying they want a global government, they want a world government, and well, we don't want them to jump on us too hard, so we'll use global governance. Well, it's important to understand, writes Smith, that Harari's ideology is common among the globalists, and the only thing I can accurately describe it as is Luciferianism, a narcissistic belief system that claims certain human beings can become gods and should be worshipped as gods. That is, they control all of us, like the Klaus Schwabs of the world. Harari and many globalists seem to think that AI is their ticket to godhood. I would compare them to the corrupt high priests of ancient cultures like the Aztecs, who used their secret knowledge of mathematics and movements of the planets to predict solar eclipses and to terrify the peasants into compliance. AI is the new solar eclipse, the great serpent eating the sun. Combine this corruption with elitist desires for a one-world government, and you can see the incredible danger that is here. And in his book, From Animals into Gods, A Brief History of Humankind, in a passage that has recently been removed from newer editions, by the way, Harari says this: "As the 21st century unfolds, nationalism is fast losing ground." Let me stop here for a moment. Did you notice that? Nationalism. That has become, of course, the bogeyman of the left. They don't like nationalism, and they want to align that with Hitler and So Donald Trump is more of a nationalist, and therefore we're going to line him up with Hitler. And so everybody in the university comes out saying nationalism is Hitlerianism. So much bunk, so much misunderstanding, so much misteaching by the professorships. But back to the article. This is, quote, and this is from Animals into Gods, A Brief History of Humankind, Harari. So, quote, more and more people believe that all of humankind is the legitimate source of political authority rather than the members of a particular nationality, and that safeguarding human rights and protecting the interest of the entire human species should be the guiding light of politics. Now that sounds like, well, sounding like he's talking about some kind of democratic republic here, that is all members of humanity instead of a particular nationality. What's he getting at? Someone's going to have to pull the strings here, make the controls here. So, quote, if so, having close to 200 independent states, oh, you see where he's going here, is a hindrance rather than a help. Bring them all into one world government. Quote, since Swedes, Indonesians, Nigerians deserve the same human rights, wouldn't it be simpler for a single global government to safeguard them? That's his 2012 book, From Animals into Gods, A Brief History of Humankind. That's page 244. So Smith writes, keep in mind that when Harari talks about human rights, he's referring to human desires. He has stated on numerous occasions that he believes freedom and individuality are fantasies, constructs of the mind with no importance in the real world. For globalists, human rights are special privileges used as leverage to buy popular compliance. They are a gift from government, not a gift from God. That is, let's stop here. Rights are a gift from government, not a gift from God. That's what Harari believes. That's what Klaus Schwab believes. That's what the Democratic Party believes, that rights are a gift from government, not from God. And what the government gives, the government can take away. Continuing from Smith's article, in the past couple of years, Harari has suddenly shifted his rhetoric and argues that global government is not the ideal. He also talks about AI as a danger that needs to be contained by bureaucracy rather than a deity that needs to be worshipped. Smith says, I suspect this is because there has been a sea change in public awareness since 2012, and now he has to be more careful about how he talks in the media. I've been working within the liberty movement since 2006, and I can say with some authority that many millions more people today are aware of the threats posed by globalism compared to 2012. That puts the globalist agenda in peril. Smith is exactly right. Brandon Smith writing this article. So, quote, with the failure of the pandemic lockdowns, I think the power brokers have been left stunned. This was clearly their big play to get the global governance they have long lusted after, and it fell apart. Attempting to induce mass fear over a virus that 99.8% of the population would easily survive did not work out well for them. Everything was riding on medical tyranny. They thought they were going to get the vaccine passports, which would then have given them total economic control of the populace. They thought they were going to introduce CBDCs, that is, digital currencies, and create a cashless society. They thought they were going to leverage the COVID lockdowns into perpetual climate lockdowns. They got nothing. Their agenda was fully exposed. The Patriot movement in the U.S. has exploded in popularity in response, and now they have millions more rebels to contend with in the future. I think Brandon Smith is exactly correct here, and that is, people are seeing their agenda for what it is. They are supporting Donald Trump, who is wanting America First agenda, and that is anathema to the global government crowd. And so they've toned down the rhetoric. They've tried to hide their agenda and make it something that people don't see right up front. So Brandon Smith continues, quote, in response to the failure, many of the prominent names during the lockdowns have faded into the background. Have you noticed that? Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum, during COVID, he was everywhere. Now, he's gone. Anthony Fauci, and what happened to him? He slipped into obscurity. I hope Rand Paul, who's pursuing Fauci's big lies and the way that he manipulated America and made money fraudulently, I hope he's going to be successful. Rand Paul. Whatever happened to Anthony Fauci? Well, he slipped into obscurity. Authoritarian leaders, writes Smith, like New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern, have stepped out of the political limelight. And where did they go? I think they know what's coming. I think they fear a populist backlash of rising torches and pitchforks, and they're going into hiding. This is where we must address the issue of Donald Trump and how he's viewed by globalists. In light of the recent assassination attempt on Donald Trump, I think it's important to revisit the long-running globalist narrative on the world order and Trump's position as scapegoat for any and all calamities that befall it. Their primary assertion is that any movement that values national interest over global centralization is an evil movement that must be suppressed or destroyed. This very rhetoric has permeated leftist political organizations, including Joe Biden's administration, or now Joe Biden, Kamala Harris's administration, and the corporate media. It is being used as a justification for subterfuge and extreme violence against conservatives. In an interview earlier this year, Harari suggested that the return of Donald Trump would mean the death of the global order. That's exactly what Harari said, and that's exactly why Donald Trump is so hated by the globalists who are the Democrats, the socialists in America. Then Harari gaslights, Smith writing, claiming that there's no fight between nationalism and globalism. The idea of a globalist conspiracy is entirely a fabrication of populist movements. That, of course, is a big fat lie, because we've already read their statements. We've been reading them for many, many years. We know their goals. We know what they've wanted. They've been out with it. Now he said, well, that's a bunch of nonsense. So Smith tells us these people truly expect us to forget the censorship and oppression they attempted during COVID. And what is most interesting is Harari's take on the next few years, in which he offers what Smith says I would interpret as a thinly veiled threat. He argues that war is coming on an expansive scale unless nationalists, defenders of sovereignty, aka Trump supporters, end the rebellion and return to order, centralized control of the globalists. He ties this threat directly to Donald Trump. So war's coming. If you support Donald Trump, war's coming. The globalists are coming after you. And that's exactly what Harari is about. That's exactly what he said. Well, the thing is, Trump is just a reflection of a larger movement against the globalist regime. Getting rid of Trump would change nothing. In fact, getting rid of Trump might make the populace commit to full force revolution even faster. And if ultimately it turns out that Trump doesn't benefit the cause of freedom from the elites, the same revolution will eventually happen without him. So, Smith says, I have my own concerns about Trump, primarily what kind of people he will place in his cabinet. We saw that in his administration prior to Biden's election. But I have long said that above all else, Trump is the most likely scapegoat for an international collapse and that the globalists themselves have created. They set the stage for these crises events by encouraging economic instability, geopolitical conflicts, Ukraine being one of the many of them. I don't see any globalists vying for a legitimate peace. They don't do that at all. This includes Republicans and Democrats in Congress. I do see them pushing to escalate various conflicts into World War III. The trick is, by blaming Trump, they think that all conservatives and nationalists will be blamed by extension. It's an obvious but somewhat clever ploy by making conservatives into the villains behind the planetary catastrophe that the elites can deflect suspicion while operating with impunity in the future. Anyone who questions them can simply be labeled as nationalist terrorists as history is being rewritten. But is the death of the global order really a bad thing? I would say that it is only a negative if the globalists are left alive to continue to manipulate the chaos that follows. So writes Smith, the real culprits behind war and economic collapse should be punished. They should be removed from power, imprisoned or done away with forever. That's exactly how Smith puts it. That's what he means by if the globalists are left alive, that is, left in control. The bottom line, globalists need to go if real peace and order is ever to be established. And we need to recognize the globalists for what they are. So, Donald Trump, the only hope right now that we have to bring back some sanity and common sense and America First agenda is Donald J. Trump.